Thank you. Dennis?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Aviv. That's a good setup for what I'm going to say. But first, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be back here again in Israel and really to witness the miracle of Israel, a large part of which depends on its economy. And of course, that depends on human capital, which is sitting in the room. So I can't avoid giving a plug that there are a lot of students in the room and a lot of faculty members. If you have any smart students who want to get an MBA, send them to the University of Chicago. We have a program for Israelis. They get a good financial package if they come back to Israel. But what I want to talk about today is really the vibrant economy of Israel and how to continue to keep it vibrant. Obviously, you have to be vigilant in preventing unnecessary regulations and protectionism and anti-competitive conduct, the concern of this conference. And there's been a lot of concern about the possibility of intervening in digital markets, more so on this side of the ocean than in the United States, but it's increasing now very rapidly in the United States as a movement to do more. I guess what I would say along the lines of Aviv said, don't fool yourself into thinking that there are easy answers to these questions. As he said, large economies of scale, markets tip, rapidly changing markets. That means you can make big mistakes that are going to last a long time, either through regulation or antitrust. That doesn't mean you should do nothing, but it does mean you've got to be very thoughtful and not be lulled into thinking there are easy answers. So in the United States, there are people calling for the breakup of Amazon. And on the other hand, there are other people saying competition solve the problem, don't do anything. I'm not sure either of those are completely right, and it's our task to find the right balance between the two, and it can be difficult. Antitrust is not going to be the solution to all problems in this area. Privacy may have special concerns, but focusing on antitrust, I think it's wise to just have a general principle that really the lawyers have put forward more than economists, and that is what you want to do is preserve the process of competition. So what does that mean? So let me just focus on a few things specifically you want to watch out for in the digital economy. Watch out for, I'll make 4 points. First one, watch out for what I call vertical most favored nations clauses. What are those? I'll give you an example. Suppose Aviv and I competing manufacturers of products. We both have very popular products, and we sell them to all the big retail stores. Aviv and I both tell the retailers, you can't charge at retail a higher price for my product, for Dennis's product, than you charge for Aviv's. Now, we didn't have that clause. If I'm worrying about what price to charge at wholesale, I say, gee, I'm going to raise my price. Oh, gee, the retail store is going to raise the price of my product. People are going to buy Aviv's product. So I'm not going to raise my price. On the other hand, once I have this most favored nations clause, this vertical, what I call the most favored nations clause, then I don't have to worry about that as much. I raise my wholesale price, I don't have to worry about losing customers at retail to Aviv's product, because the retailer can't distinguish price. So that alters the nature of competition between the two of us. Instead of me trying to get customers from him by lowering the price, I raise my wholesale price. So it really undoes competition. Such restrictions appear in many places in the digital economy. They occur also in the non-digital economy. But for example, in credit cards, I don't know in Israel whether you allow rules of no surcharging at the retail level. But in the United States, that's been a big issue. In hotel booking sites, a hotel booking site might say, you want to use my platform and you're a hotel? I don't want you to be able to put a price on the hotel booking platform that is higher than the price you would charge if a customer calls you directly. Well, those types of clauses impede competition, or can. I'm not saying they are always bad. I'm just saying if you see a dominant firm engaging in those, you should pay special attention. That's the first one. Second thing I would look at is as Aviv said, data is key in understanding many aspects of this industry. So what does that mean? That means you should really be on guard if a firm tries to, a dominant firm, tries to restrict access to the information of a third-party website, for example. So let's suppose I'm a dominant firm, and I say to a website, you have to rely on me to get customers to your website. That's fine, I'll make things work very easily between your website and my engine that takes people there. But in return, I don't want you to allow any other of my rivals to put cookies on your website. So I want to be the only person who knows which customers are buying, who's buying, things like that. Well, those are the type of restrictions that you should start worrying about. Again, you can have justifications for them, but if you're a dominant if there's a dominant firm, you might want to be especially on guard. What's another observation from data? Maybe data is a relevant market. So if two firms are merging and they have data sets, but they do very different things in terms of dealing with the consumer, then maybe initially you'd say there's no competition between the two. But maybe that's not the right way to look at it, because they have data sets that both can be used in the future for similar purposes. That's really hard to predict, I would say. You know, these arguments about potential competition are really difficult. On the other hand, I think we have to give some thought to that. And that's leading some people in the United States to say, I'm not going to allow big firms to buy startups, because in retrospect, I see some of those startups have turned out terrific. Well, all I can say is, hindsight is great. But it's much more difficult to predict in the future, oh, this little startup, if I leave them alone and don't allow this merger, it's going to be a big competitor against Google or something like that. That was a really hard question, but maybe we should pay attention to those. Those could be especially important in affecting Israel because of so many sales of startups. There's been a lot of call and proposals as to who owns the data. All I would point out is it's not so much data ownership. A lot of people say the customer should own the data, the customer should get paid. That has maybe to do with who makes money and where the money goes. But if you're worried about competitive issues, the important thing is, can you get exclusive use to the data? It's exclusivity of the data that matters. Saying, oh, you the consumer own the data, doesn't solve any problem, doesn't make it available to all rivals, makes it available to the one rival who could bid the highest price for exclusivity. Well, that doesn't solve a competitive problem. So if you really want to solve a competitive problem, you have to allow a consumer perhaps to own data, but then be able not to sell it exclusively. And I'm not entirely sure, but I believe the only time in the United States where I own my own data and I can't give it away exclusively is my medical records, which I think I always have access to. 1 minute, okay? There's been a lot of discussion about data portability, and all I would say is there may be some good aspects to data portability, but just remember, it costs effort to structure a database and keep it, and you could have adverse incentives on allowing firms to do that. Let me just end with two things. I don't really have time to go into them in detail. All of these markets, and a lot of digital markets, are multi-sided. That means where you're getting payments, how you're monetizing the system matters a lot. In such situations under antitrust law, I guarantee you, we're already seeing it in the United States. I suspect we'll see more of it. I expect lots of antitrust suits involving tying-in sales because of the monetization coming from the many different products. finally, as my last comment, many people are saying there should be forced dealing by a dominant firm. It should deal with its rivals. So in the United States, the duty to deal is some debate, but generally you don't have a big duty to deal with rivals. In Europe, it's a little different, but the notion of an essential facility comes up a lot. Just be careful. There are two things you got to worry about when you force companies, and we know this from some telecommunications regulation. When you force companies to make their facilities available to rivals, reduces their incentive to invest. It's pretty clear, so be careful. But sometimes, that doesn't mean you should do nothing. Sometimes, I think regulation rather than antitrust can be the answer to improve operations, which comes about sometimes when you require interoperability. So phone networks are a good example. Wireless phone networks, when you require them to interoperate, you often get efficiencies. So no easy answers, but important questions that you have to study carefully. Thank you.
Thanks.